Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with reference recordings. And today we're talking about Brahms Symphony cycles. Now, this is actually very interesting because, as I pointed out, even when a composer writes a bunch of masterpieces, and Brahms' four symphonies certainly qualify, that doesn't mean that there are reference recordings for all of them. I may have my personal selections for what the best ones are. I know you all do. We can have personal reference recordings, but that's not what I'm talking about. For some reason, there has never been a consensus that coalesced around any single recording of the third or fourth symphonies, in the way that it has around the first and second symphonies, which are just sort of more popular, I guess. I don't know, whatever the actual reason is. But the bottom line is that we have to talk about symphony cycles. And when we talk about symphony cycles, we're talking about versions which are consistently fine throughout all four of the symphonies, or consistently no disasters throughout all four symphonies. And there are two reference recordings for Brahms symphonies, which are rather complementary. They really are. I'm fascinated, actually, by the comparisons between the two. They are, quite simply, Bruno Walter and Otto Klemperer. I mean, it couldn't be clearer. And the reason should be pretty obvious. Both of these guys have the provenance. You know, they're both from North Germany. They both were old enough to know Brahms himself. They were alive when Brahms was rip-roaring and ready to go. And so they have an idiomatic approach to the Brahms style, and they had to which they brought their own particular predilections. But as I said, they tend to be complementary. Why? Because Klemperer was really good in the stoic heaven-storming first, of which this is probably the reference recording for that symphony as well, whereas Bruno Walter was really dynamite in numbers 2 and 3, particularly. Klemperer did a wonderful third, too. They were kind of equal in the fourth. Klemperer was a little odd in the fourth. I like the performance a lot, but it's a little bit quirky. Walter was much better in terms of a consistent approach to the fourth, a more standardized, normal approach to the fourth. But Klemperer is uniquely grim, and his forward woodwind balances do what they do, and Walter's intensely beautiful singing lyricism and human warmth and all the things he was known for pay huge dividends as well. So, and Klemperer, Walter, certainly isn't a slouch in the first symphony. He's just not as granitic as Klemperer. So these were the ones that everybody referred to back in the day as having a unique approach to Brahms. And Walter, let's not forget, did a mono cycle with the New York Philharmonic, which was also really terrific. And it had some variable qualities in terms of sonics, but some amazingly exciting performances there too. So that is where we are with Brahms symphonies. It's really very straightforward and simple. But we got to talk about why some of the other ones are not reference recordings. That's what makes this whole thing so interesting. For example, Toscanini, not a reference. Why? Because he never got the third symphony. He just never really got it. And in his last NBC cycle, the third is just dreadful. It's terrible. And you have to remember that his Philharmonia Brahms cycle, the one that came out on Testament with the firecrackers going off and on the roof of the building and all kinds of stuff, and the horrible trombone mess up at the entrance in the chorale and the finale of the first and all that, however wonderful it may have been, otherwise, it was not released commercially until, well into the CD era. So there was that one. And then there, of course, is Furtwängler, who did always a dynamite Brahms first. His Brahms firsts were wonderful, but he never formally made a Brahms cycle at all. All we have are individual broadcast releases that coalesce at one point or another, and maybe you could assemble something. But we're not talking about commercially released cycles, and they were available as pirate recordings, not as formal commercial releases. And so to assemble a Furtwängler Brahms cycle was something of a project. And when the EMI came to do it, oh my God, he also never quite got the third. It was just dreadful, awful performances. And then there were the wartime Furtwänglers, which some people swear by as, You can't go there. You can talk about individual performances of some works, and you can rave all you like, but that doesn't make them, just because you're a cult member, that doesn't make these the reference recordings. Because, as I've said many times, there are many factors that go into making reference recordings, not the least of which is the commercial factor, what label they were on, how they were marketed and sold, and who the artists were. But really, you're not going to get a better pair of Brahmsians than these guys. You just ain't. It doesn't work any better than that. And so I don't think there's any controversy that Bruno Walter and Klemperer were the reference editions in Brahms symphony cycles. Now, if we're going to talk about individual symphonies, well, that's a topic for another day. We will do the first and the second symphonies, but I can tell you right away, for the first symphony, we're going to come around again to this. And for the second, we're going to come around again to this. Maybe we won't make new videos about those two symphonies because it just isn't necessary. They're in those cycles. Sometimes that's how it worked out. And there we are. Simple. No possible, I think, means for gross disagreement in this case. But you never know. Some people always disagree about everything. Keep on listening, friends. You know what your Brahms is. Just go for it. I mean, you should have these anyway. Take care.